time thing is you have to win.
Ill intent, violence, physicality, pain. Enough is enough.
All right, welcome back to the Just Win podcast. This is the final regular season episode. That's Vic Taper, that's Tashan Reed. If you haven't heard, the Raiders have not made the playoffs, so this is their last game of the 24-25 season. They lost to the Chargers in the season finale, 34-20. The Chargers are on their way to the playoffs. The Raiders are 4-13. A bunch of insiders today, or national insiders, this morning reported or gave their opinion. I don't know which one is which anymore, but they said there's some optimism that Antonio Pierce is back. So what do we think about that?
I think from Tashan and my perspective, I don't think anything's really changed. I think that Mark Davis still has to decide. I don't think he hasn't decided yet. I think whether he did after the game, he talked to Antonio Pierce for a while, but he didn't have any comment. Neither did Antonio. So we'll find out shortly. But I think there are reasons why he'd want him back, and there are reasons, obviously, why he wouldn't. So I think he has to decide. No one else really knows right now. But the fact that as of right this second, Antonio Pierce is still the head coach of the Raiders, I think is probably not a bad sign for him.
Yeah, I don't think. It's kind of just funny seeing what the insider stuff, because a few weeks ago it was a done deal that he was fired, and now there's optimism he's going to get kept. But I think anything before this game that day was played, I wouldn't put too much into. I think this game meant a lot in terms of which way Mark Davis is going to go, and I think them losing in the manner that they did, it being a pretty, I know they cut it down at the end, but it was a pretty lopsided game by the end of it. They weren't particularly competitive. Obviously, the Chargers still had a lot to play for, and playoff seeding and whatnot. But still, to go out like that in their home finale definitely hurts his chances. I don't think it's been decided. I think I get to say Mark Davis wants to sleep on it and make his final decision sometime tomorrow. So he didn't talk or anything after the game, so we don't have direct insight into what he's thinking. But I think I don't think anything will come today. I know we've already had some head coaching news with Gerard Mayo getting fired by the Patriots, but I don't envision us having that type of situation tonight.
Even today's game, though, I know people look at the score. You mentioned they got ahead late, but if you look at it, first half, they probably should be up 10-9 at halftime, but Aiden O'Connell throws that terrible interception, and the Chargers score to go up, 17-10. That was kind of the turning point in the game. And afterwards, Antonio didn't say much after the game, but he did say that, the glaring need in this team is pretty obvious, and that's quarterback. And I think that plus the defensive injuries is what gives him a case to why he should be back next year. I think Mark Davis is open to that argument. I just don't know if the argument wins him over or not, but I think he definitely is considering it, and that's why, as of right now, we have no answers.
Yeah, I think he has the quarterback excuse going for him. I'm not saying I buy this. I'm not saying I buy his case to stay, but I'm saying for him, I think his case is the quarterback thing and the game management issues. I think he could say, "Oh, this is my first year being a head coach. I could get better at it. Maybe if I have a plan and get my game management guy downstairs right next to me, maybe there's a little bit better communication there. But something there has to get fixed. It can't just become like we're going into next year with the same thing and just hope that he gets better. But regardless, to me, I just don't think he's done enough, in my opinion. And I just think the game management issues just never got better. It didn't come up again late in the season just because, by the end of the game, it's just, well, in this game at least, they got blown out. So we'll see what happens. It clearly is not decided yet. Like you guys said, Gerard Mayo was fired immediately after. So Mark Davis will take some time and think about it, maybe talk about it with Tom Brady. But I just think if the process is that you're giving, you gave him this charge to go win the last few games, and he won a couple games, and if that's a huge part of your process, to me, that's just a bad process. like these are meaningless games. He beat a couple backup quarterbacks. So what, But
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could have said the same thing last year with a lot of the teams that they were beating. Outside of the Chiefs game on Christmas,
yeah, I agree
like
with
there was
that
a lot of
process too.
yeah. So I mean,
Really
so it's kind of hard to like give him the job for 1 year and then next year you don't care about it. Like we just know that Mark Davis is that type of owner. Like he wants to see them win. More so he's worried about draft positioning or anything like that. So yeah. I don't think it's you shouldn't be deciding necessarily. I don't think if you keep your head coaching out over a meaningless Week 18 game, but I'm just saying what Mark Davis is factoring into it. Like whether we agree with it or not, like he cared about how they ended the season. So
Also, on the other side of the coin, and look at Jared Mayo, who got fired today. I guarantee you getting blown out at home last week was a huge factor in him getting fired. And I think Antonio Pierce, for whatever it's worth, with a team that's playing, like he said today, I mean, 20 new guys on defense and, kind of guys didn't know each other at the beginning of the season. And even today, they're competitive for a half at least. And I know they were definitely, undermanned against the Chargers. Chargers going to the playoffs. So I think his team was competitive in these games. Whatever that's worth, I don't know, but I think it's worth something.
yeah, I mean, like today, I don't really like they got beat, pretty soundly today. I think it was like 31-3 runs. So I'm not really giving them the competitive edge on this one. Really, but it was, I think that more shows that like, they came prepared to play, but like their roster just isn't very good. Like, it wasn't to begin with, but they had 12 guys on injured reserve, 5 defensive starters, the quarterback situation, like. And they're going against a good team. And like the Chargers were just, it's not like they got their ass kicked by the Giants last week like the Colts did or something like that. So, like two things can be true. Like you can believe that AP isn't the right head coach, but we also just have to be honest and look at this roster and we can see like this isn't a roster that's built to contend or be competitive. It's probably going to take multiple seasons or just like the greatest offseason ever for them to, turn it around. Like AP kind of got asked about it in kind of a roundabout way at his press conference, and he was, he's not gonna throw his guys under the bus, so he just kind of, I had 53 guys, like nobody feels bad for me, but you could, read between the lines. I think he was asked another question about, how quickly can they turn things around, and we could all see like what the obvious need is, or however he worded it, but he was, talking about quarterback, of course, if you read between the lines. So I do think that'll be part of his pitch to keep his job is like, I mean, what did you guys give me for me to be better than 4-13 this season?
Yeah, but despite having Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers, their offense still stinks. I mean, I think I did the numbers for my story tomorrow, and 9 games with Luke Getsy, 17.9 points a game. 8 games with Scott Turner, 17.6 points a game. So they actually were worse in terms of, I know it looked better in some parts, and people say, the wrinkles were better, but just in terms of pure facts and points per game, they were worse with Scott Turner than they were with, and that's even with, a healthier offensive line. So I think it just shows you the talent was the issue in offense, not really coaching.
Yeah, I mean, the eye test to me, they just moved the ball more efficiently, and obviously they had their red zone issues, and didn't score points. Curious to see some of the more advanced metrics. I think they'll probably show a little bit more favorability towards Turner, but regardless, they didn't do what they're supposed to do, which is score points. But whoever the head coach is going to be, what do the Raiders need to do from here? How do they fix this thing? It seems like they're kind of out of position to get a quarterback, and the more and more we are evaluating this class, the more it just doesn't seem like a good class. Shadir might not even. There's a report from, I think, Tom Pelissero that there are some scouts that aren't even giving Shadir a first-round grade or anywhere close to that, according.
I mean, people think a lot of things, but I don't know. Like, I don't really agree with the quarterback class. And everybody keeps like, I feel like everybody just said it before the season started. And like, no matter what happened this season, they were just going to say the quarterback class talk because, like, I think Shadur played pretty well this year. I think he's going to be good at the next level. But also, like, I can see the intrigue with Cam Moore. But either way, like you said, like the Raiders were where they're at. It's not really realistic. They finished with the 6th overall pick after today's results, and they're behind a few teams that need quarterbacks. The Titans at number 1, the Browns at number 2, the Giants at number 3. So it's like, why would any of those teams, like maybe the Browns might be interested in trading down if they're just going to, ran back with Tashan, but then, the Giants are right there at 3. Like, it'd make a lot more sense for them to just go down one spot than trade all the way back to 6. So it looks like drafting one, at least in the first round, might not be feasible. But however they move forward, I think the first thing they have to answer is what's the plan at quarterback? Because it's been a kind of a crazy cycle since, they cut Derek Carr. Paul Gutierrez mentioned it in the press box when we were finishing up, but, been through 6 different starting quarterbacks in like just over 2 years, so, and they haven't found the answer yet. So I think, even if you don't figure out what your long-term, I'm not saying you have to get your long-term guy this offseason, but you have to have a more coherent plan than what they had this past year. The Minshew signing was pretty terrible, and Trigger, he's probably going to get cut going into the offseason. Aiden O'Connell, like, he's fine, but I think he's, really a high-end backup, low-level starter. So you got to have at least one more guy to the quarterback room, whether that's, via trade, via free agency, if you take a guy later on in the draft. But that's, I think, the top priority, whether it's Antonio Pierce's head coach or whoever they hire, if he does get fired. So I think that's where it starts. AP pretty much said it today, and you just look around the division, every team has an answer at quarterback. Obviously, the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes. It looks like the Broncos have found, a Jim and Bo Nix. And then, we saw what Justin Herbert, as we all know, he's one of the better quarterbacks in the league today with the Chargers. And so, they could get better without, having, I guess an improvement at quarterback, but they're just not going to be competing at the level that they want to be until they figure that out.
Yeah. I mean, other than quarterback, let's talk about what this team has. Like, I think offensive line. I thought DJ Glaze played really well today. The line did a good job of picking up some of those tricky Chargers pressures. They couldn't run the ball that well, but again, they didn't really try. I think things got out of hand, and they were trying to pass the ball. They probably could have kept trying to run a little bit more, but at the same time, they lost a bunch of running backs and down to Alexander Madison and Collier at running back. So, but yeah, I think the offensive line has improved. Some of the young guys came in, Glaze, Jackson Powers Johnson, and Parham has improved this year. As far as improving the offensive line, like, do you guys think they should spend capital on maybe getting a star player or a high draft pick on offensive lineman?
Yeah, I think you should always explore adding to the trenches. And, while they did have some guys that played at a solid level this year, I don't think, I would say probably Colton Miller and Jackson Powers Johnson are probably the only guys that, like, I would, like, think you just, lock them in as starters for next year. I think they should explore help, whether it's at guard or right tackle, trying to make upgrades at those spots. And so I think they have plenty of young guys, kind of developmental type of guys. So I think it'd be more prudent for them to sign or, acquire a veteran who can step in and be a high level starter from day one. It's been a minute since they've had that on the offensive line. And so I think if they're able to find a guy that kind of fits that mold, that'd be a sound addition. I know that the guard market, exploded this past year, and I'm sure it's only going to be even higher this year. So it won't be cheap, but I mean, they have a ton of cap space. They have the salary cap isn't set yet, but they're projected to have over 100 million cap space. So got to spend it on something.
Yeah, I agree. I think you should bring in a veteran guy to compete with Glaze, or else maybe a guard. But I think definitely the O-line's got some intriguing possibilities now. You don't know if they're going to come to fruition. A lot depends on the off seasons that Glaze has and Powers, Johnson. But I think that you see some hope. I think finally, I think it was pretty dismal beginning of the year, but Cole came on after a rough start. I think you see some hope for this unit. And like Sean said, a veteran guy, either a guard or a tackle, a guy can come in and be a legitimate starter. A guy don't have to worry about being a nice boon for this offense.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think Jackson Powers Johnson is on a star trajectory. Like,
wow.
I mean, the guy is making highlights every week, like throwing guys on the ground. You still have the mental mistakes, but I mean, he's a rookie. I mean, to me, it just looks like he has the makings of a star guard that you want, a powerful guy inside in a run game, a guy that could, not give any ground in the pass game and really fortify that top of the pocket there. To me, DJ Glaze, he's improved every game, but it's still hard to say like, oh, this guy's your shoe-in starter moving on into the next year. So I think that's going to be a lot of internal evaluation. Like, what does the Philbin think of him? Even if he's not back next year, his opinion on he's been a guy that's been around a long time. But like, what's his evaluation on Glaze and what he thinks he's going to be? But I think he's at least a solid starter. That his opinion, my opinion of him is improved to that. I think he's going to be at least a solid starter. I don't know if he could be a star, but I think he could be at least a solid starter at the position. And Trey Smith is going to be one of the big free agent guards next year. You have some cap space. Do you want to go out and spend that money on him and pair him with Jackson Powers Johnson and really have a powerful interior? Because that's kind of the thing in the league now. Like, a lot of teams are playing too high. A lot of fronts are a lot lighter, and the best teams in the league build their offensive line, and then they go out and get a star back, and that gives them a lot of productivity and gives them something that you hang your hat on. So that's just something that we'll talk about more in the offseason. Other than that,
yeah, I mean, like the rest of the roster, I mean, it's not, like the roster is just like devoid of talent or something of that nature. I'm not saying it's like a, super good roster or something like that, but obviously they have a guy in Brock Bowers who, barring a surprise, is going to be an All-Pro as a rookie. Arguably the best tight end in the league already. Jacoby Myers, I think, is a really strong, wide receiver 2, low end wide receiver 1. Trey Tucker flashed this year. You hit on the offensive line. On the defensive side of the ball, I think it's just really about injuries this year. But even with those injuries, we saw some guys flash. Some older guys like veterans like Adam Butler and John Jenkins, Robert Spillane, Chason. I think defense, it was just injuries. So I think they would. I feel pretty optimistic about the defense with better injury luck next year. You have a nice young corner in Jacorian Bennett. You got Max Crosby, of course, Spillane. Kuntz, if he gets healthy, Christian Wilkins coming back. So I think there's pieces here. Like, it's not like it's just the worst roster in the league. It's just they got really decimated by injuries this year, and they don't have a quarterback. And when that happens, chances are you're not going to have a very good team. But between the amount of cap space that they have, and them still having like I know they're probably not going to be able to draft a quarterback in the first round, but the 6th overall pick is still a really good draft pick. So you can get a high level player at that spot, especially if teams are drafting quarterbacks ahead of you, and there's a plethora of players at other positions. So I think there's a path towards, really upgrading this roster. And, they can't control injuries, of course. Like, maybe everybody gets injured again next year, but at least on paper, I think they could be they should be in a better position going into 2025.
That's good. The margin for error was so thin this year. I think that the hope is that you bring some of the guys back, who are hurt, some of the guys defense are free agents. And then the guys who stepped up this year, the guys who filled in, give you much better depth than you had, So I think it's ideally it's a kind of a cycle effect. So I think there's some hope, especially on defense, if you can bring Patrick Graham back, bring some of those guys back. I think Merrick's going to be gone. I think he talked to him today. He seemed like he's pretty excited about his free agent possibility. He should be. He had a good year. I think is a very valuable position. I think teams like him. He's obviously young and got upside still. So I think he'll be probably too expensive to bring back. But otherwise, I think you can bring back a lot of these guys on defense and kind of have what you thought you had at training camp and kind of take off from there.
Yeah, I was going to say Meredith probably played himself to a pretty nice contract. We saw guys
Merrick?
that. Are we talking about more? Oh, Merrick. Sorry, I thought the guard Meredith. I think some people are looking at him as a possible starter.
All right, so both guys make you rich.
Yeah, because those, I think, like we said, those guards last year, man, they got paid. Like, if you showed a little bit of potential at guard, you were getting a nice little contract. And that's just the way the league is moving now. Yeah, I mean, I think this team you're close to building out pretty well in the trenches. The defensive line is very solid. Tyree Wilson has improved. Obviously, he needs to make a big third-year jump. You could bring back Malcolm Kuntz and maybe get some pieces on that D-line. That's going to be one of the better D-lines possibly. And we talked about the O-line, and I think that's the first step to rebuilding any team is just through the trenches. So they're close to that. Any other pieces you guys think, or any position group that you think the Raiders are pretty solid in?
I think we hit on. I mean, the specialists, of course. Shouts out to AJ Cole and Daniel Carson and the gang. But no, that's probably about it.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. D-line is probably that jumps out, and I think, yeah, I mean, Ja'Cory Bennett was a nice find this year. Definitely took a step up, so I think that's definitely a nice luxury to have. That Jack Jones had ups and downs, but I think he's still a guy who's an intriguing player. I think he's going to be a piece
Is
still.
he under
So I think,
contract next year?
yeah. So,
Okay.
so yeah. So then, I mean, at Hobbs, I think like he missed 6 games this year, and with him, the injuries is always a concern. So I'm not sure what his price will be to come back. But I think if you add a veteran cornerback, and it might be okay back there. I think next year.
Yeah, I would agree. I know fans coming off 4-13 season might be hard to like buy into that, especially with the Raiders like draft history and whatnot. But Tom Telesco had a pretty good draft this year. Helped boost their young talent a little bit. And if they have better injury luck and figure some things out, like it's a lot of ifs, I know, but that's every year. That's the NFL. That's how it works. So, this was a rough year and a disappointing year, especially since they had. I won't say everybody thought they were going to be a playoff team, but I think they thought that they, were capable of making the playoffs this year, coming off of last year, and fell well short of that. But there is some reason to have some optimism for the future.
I think they have to recognize that this is not going to be a quick turnaround and try to fix it with a bunch of band-aids and splashy moves. Find some players that could be around for a while. With that, let's get into the tank update. I think things have moved around today.
Yeah, like I said earlier, so the Titans have the first pick, the Browns have the second pick, the Giants have the third pick, the Patriots now have the fourth pick since they decided to win and fire their head coach, and then the Jaguars are at 5 and the Raiders are at 6. So, I mean,
Not bad.
those three teams at the top, are probably going to take out the top quarterback options. But like we said, there should be a collection of whatever position. We have to see what the Raiders do at free agency, of course, to see like what their needs are. But there should be some blue chip talent there at 6. Even after if they do end up staying put at 6. So it's not as good as it could have been. I know a lot of fans were rooting for that top 2 pick, so they could get a quarterback, but. Like I said, they could still land a pretty good player right there.
Yeah. I think I'm getting more and more okay with the idea of just getting the best player available and not going quarterback this year. At 6, you could get a blue chip prospect, maybe a corner like Will Howard, who knows, maybe even Travis Hunter probably not going to fall that far.
No, probably not.
Yeah, but you could probably get a blue chip prospect, maybe fortify the defensive line, get 2 cornerback ones. And I mean, there's some guys outside the first round that you could take a shot on. I mean, I'm never really too excited about quarterbacks outside the first round. They rarely work out, and guys in the first round rarely work out. But maybe, I don't know, hope that Sam Darnold leads the Vikings to the Super Bowl, and they might be willing to trade away JJ McCarthy, because JJ McCarthy might be the most highly rated quarterback in this draft class.
So I don't know why they would do that. I don't know why they would trade McCarthy now. I mean, you can wait a year and trade him. I don't know what the motivation is to trade him, even if you give Sam Darnold a franchise tag.
If let's say Darnold takes the Vikings to the NFC Championship and plays really well, and he convinces everybody that he's the franchise quarterback.
You give him a franchise tag. Franchise tag. Let's
yeah, I mean, you could franchise tag him, or
do it again.
And you franchise tag him, he plays well again, then he might be really expensive.
Yeah, worry about that shit later, man. What the fuck? I'm not finna just trade a quarterback just because. I don't know. This has been a weird. I don't know
what if the Raiders dangle their first or second round, probably second round pick, but what if they dangle that high second round pick at him? You have Sam Darnold coming back. You have this offense intact with Justin Jefferson, and then you have a chance to add another big time player. And you think, and Sam Darnold's a young player too. He's not an old quarterback. He's a young quarterback, former top 5 pick. I mean, I think it's possible. I'm not saying they'll do it, but I think it's possible.
Okay. I think you can always trade down too. You can trade it out from 6 and get like Jackson Dort. That's his name, Dort, right? Not Dart.
Dart. Hey, fuck. Yeah, it's Dart.
Jackson Dart. That's actually a better name. Jackson Dart and another player there. So there's a lot of options, man. Raider fans should be excited about all the possibilities. There's so many. You can trade for Kyler Murray. You can like maybe Trevor Lawrence is available. Jake Browning. And there's so many guys you can. There's so exciting,
Jake Browning.
exciting possibilities,
geez.
man. The world's the Raiders' oyster, man. Just suck it up.
All right. Well, that's all we have for you guys today. If you guys want to tip $100 for our last question,
Don't do
I'll
that.
let
Don't do that.
Stop
you-
begging for tips.
Well,
Come
what's-
on, man. Have some dignity, man. Have some pride.
Yeah, jeez, man. On a serious
These
note,
Raider fans that watch this terrible team all year, all this shit that happens, you're like, hey,
give me some money.
Hey,
Yeah, give me some money, man.
just throwing shots out.
we're poking our fingers in your
Scott.
wounds. Give us some money. It's all love, man. Thanks for listening. We appreciate you guys. I know it's been a rough year, but
Yeah.
let's
Looks like
have a
another
nice-
big audience today. So yeah.
let's have a nice, informative, dramatic off season and see what happens.
Yeah, man. Appreciate y'all listening and watching, and however else you're tuning in all year, and we'll see what the offseason holds.
Yeah, and we'll announce when we have our next pod. Are we gonna do like a season end pod this week?
We probably should.
I think, yeah, but we're gonna see kind of how things do. Yeah, we might have some emergency pods. You know what I mean? So we'll see.
Oh yeah, that's
Do you
true.
have an emergency sound, Neil? Do you have like a thing ready for emergency podcast?
Yeah, he's got to get a fucking alarm or something.
Come on, Neil. See? Come on,
Yeah,
man. Why not?
he's not. You put him on the spot.
I
Like,
did,
wait
man.
until we
That's
actually
what-
have.
That's what we gotta do.
Yeah, once we have an emergency, he'll have it ready. Though.
What the fuck is that?
And then that's what it's like funeral music. Is that like if
I was like-
when somebody gets fired?
That was like Days of Our Lives. Like, what the hell was that? All right, we'll work on that. That's
We'll figure it
in
out.
development.
Figure it
We'll
out.
work on that for next time.
All right, guys. We'll talk to you soon, I think.
Cool.
Hasta
Peace.
la vista.